Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 620, and today's date is March 19th, 2015, and the title of this report is U.S. Government Central Bankers Hyping Propaganda to Invade Syria. Let's get right into the economic collapse news. Now, we understand that Greece still owes the ECB a lot of money. They're trying to work out their debt problems, and we understand that Greece has been dipping into the pensions to pay for the interest on the loan. And now it looks like the Syria government is now raiding the major state utility firms to lend the government cash through short-term repo transaction as it scrambles to avoid running out of cash at this time. And while all of this is happening, the people in Greece, they are removing their money from the banks. I mean, the flight of deposits yesterday alone amounted to about 350 to 400 million euros, which was some 5 times higher than the daily average in previous days. Banks are getting worried about the new surge of withdrawals, and we can see why they're doing this, because the people are very nervous. They don't know in which direction this government is going yet. They see some possibilities, and then they say, look, they're still trying to deal with this, and they're raiding the pension funds, they're raiding the utilities, and we don't know what's going on here. And the Bank of Greece data show that deposits shrank by 4 billion euros in December and went on to drop about 12 billion in January, and bankers estimate that the outflow has amounted to another 10 billion euros since early February. And we can see all throughout Europe, we're seeing a lot of anti-austerity protests. We see that each country is in a huge amount of debt, and if we look, not every country, but most of them are starting to feel the pressure that Greece is feeling. I mean, we see France in the same position, we see Spain, we see Portugal, we see Italy, we see Cyprus, and as they continually get more and more debt, we see more and more people out there saying, we have had enough. Now, of course, all throughout the world, these private Western Central Bank countries, they are headed towards a depression collapse scenario here. And of course, the central bankers are trying to cover this up. And if you ever, when you look at the corporate media, you see that they're telling you that everything is just fine, that everything's going to be fine, that we're in a recovery, and we don't have to worry about it. I mean, they told us this back in 2008 when they first bailed out Greece, and they told us they're back on track, everything's going to be fine. Please look the other way. But here we are, 7 years later, and it is 100 times worse. So everything is not getting better. It's actually getting worse. And here in the United States, we see the initial jobless claims in the major shale states have started to rise again. Texas, the initial claims ticked up once again because of these low gas prices. It's really hurting a lot of these oil states quite hard. And we see that here in the United States, they don't count everybody on unemployment. They kind of look over those people that have fallen off. I mean, actually, in the last unemployment numbers, when they brought it down to 5.5%, they didn't count about 100,000 people that lost their jobs in North Dakota, Texas, because of the oil suppression. They just overlooked it. Didn't include it. And we can see they're continually manipulating all these numbers as we go forward. And they have to do it even more so as we go along, because everything is not really in a recovery. I mean, look back to 2008 when things started to fall apart. We had many bailouts, 1, 2, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And the people had to bail them out because of all the bad loans and everything they were doing. Well, we're in that same situation once again. Fannie Mae right now will make its smallest payment to taxpayers in more than 4 years after large derivative losses, which crimped their fourth quarter profit. The derivative losses helped reduce quarterly profit to about 1.3 billion, about 80% less than a year earlier. Where do you think Fannie and Freddie are headed? To another collapse. And when the real estate market falls apart and people do not pay back their mortgages, the whole thing just completely falls apart. Regulators right now, they're very concerned that the problems leading up to the previous housing crisis are now being repeated. Well, of course they are. We've been looking at the real estate industry, and guess what? It has never, ever recovered. All they did was mask it by having foreign people come in, pay for the properties in cash. They gave investment companies, hedge funds, free money from the Fed. They came in and paid for houses in cash, then tried to rent them out, but they told them, do not sell them. Hold on to them to drive the prices up once again. They told the banks, do not foreclose on those homes. Just let the people live there. Let the people live there even if they don't pay their mortgage. Meanwhile, the Fed was buying up all the toxic real estate on the bank's books. And they've done this over time. Now, during this whole time period, mortgage companies, mortgage departments like in Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo, they were laying off thousands upon thousands of people. And here we are again. And if we look at all the indicators, we can see that we're heading exactly where we were back in 2008. Actually, it's going to be 10, 50, 100 times worse, because those people who lost their homes, lost their jobs, don't have credit, never recovered. And the system in general has declined, and we added on more debt. And more people are unemployed today than ever before. And we look at the national debt back in 2008. I mean, where were we when the crisis hit? We were around $10 trillion. And of course, this is the debt that the government's trying to show us, but we know there's off-book debt and everything else that really is around 200 trillion. But let's just use the 10 trillion around 2008 or so. Today, we topped 18 trillion. So that's not much better. The velocity of money has decreased. When an economy is healthy, money tends to change hands and circulate through the system quite rapidly. So it makes sense that the velocity of money fell dramatically during the last recession. But the question is, why has it continually gone down? Because the Fed has given the free money to the banks, and they've told the banks to hold on to it, to not let it out into the general population. The home ownership rate has dropped. We're at 20-year lows. If we go back to 2008, home ownership in percentage was around 69% right before the recession. Where are we today? 63%. How could home ownership be going down if we are in a recovery? The trend is continually down, not up. The employment rate, just prior to the last recession, approximately 63% of the working age population of the United States was employed. During the recession, this ratio fell below 59%. Just recently, it has peaked back above 59%. We are not adding jobs. And all the jobs that we've added, guess what? They're part-time jobs. They're not the full, high-paying jobs. We have become a part-time nation. And if we look at this, we see the labor participation rate. Back prior to 2008, the recession, the labor participation rate was between 66 and 66.5%. Today, we are down at 62% at this point. So what does that tell us? It tells us they decided not to count all those people who haven't been on an interview for the last 4 weeks. Even though they're continually sending out their resume and they want a good job, we're just not going to count them. And all those people in the oil states who've lost their jobs, we're just not even going to look at them. We're looking in a completely different direction. If we look at the median household income prior to 2008, where were we? $56,500. It has dropped down to $52,000. That is because people are taking on part-time jobs. People are taking the same job for less money. we are not in a recovery. From the Social Security Administration, 39% of American workers make less than $20,000 a year. 52% of Americans make less than $30,000. 63% of Americans make less than $40,000. 72% of Americans make less than $50,000 a year. So we can see right now from all these numbers and everything we talked about, the United States is not in recovery. And if we take this out further, we see real estate right now, prices are coming down, mortgage applications are declining, and houses are staying on the market longer and longer and longer. And we've seen this before. Back in 2007, leading into 2008, traffic dried up. We see new construction, existing home sales, all declining. We see retailers closing stores. Toys R Us, their flagship store in New York, is closing. Well, why would it be closing? Well, it must be the recovery, because when you're in a recovery, we have stores going out of business. We have Target close all their stores in Canada, get rid of 17,000 people. We see many other stores completely going out of business, like Lowe's. And we see right now Toys R Us is closing their flagship store. If we're in a recovery, sales would be booming. The retail industry wouldn't be contracting, and that's what we're seeing right now. The Fed is out there saying, we might not raise the rates right now. And I'm telling you, they're just stringing us along. If they raise rates and they let them go up, the real estate industry and everything else comes tumbling down quickly. We saw this back in 2006 going to 2007 when rates were ticking up. And every time they moved up, people just left their homes. Most of them had adjustable rate mortgages. And the rate that it went up, they couldn't lock into because they couldn't afford it. And we're going to see the same thing occur once again. And we see most of the U.S. allies in Europe are moving over to the Chinese Development Bank. And we see another country, Luxembourg, they are also going to sign up with the Development Bank. Spain is looking at the Development Bank. And of course, the United States is giving their warning saying, you better not do this or else. Well, what's the else? And again, we are seeing this from the viewpoint of Europe. They are looking at the situation and they're saying, the dollar is dying. The BRIC system is growing. We better protect ourselves from this major, major collapse. I mean, Russia and China right now, they're going to open a joint e-commerce platform in the summer. Russian online payment system Yandex Money is to start processing payments for China. Online platform Trade Ease, which is aimed at increasing cross-border trade between the two countries. The project is expected to have a turnover of about $830,000 in the first 3 months. The new platform will allow Chinese shops operating on the border with Russia to sell their goods online. And we can see that Russia, China, they're making economic deals all over the world without their military, without force. The United States is using their military everywhere. And we see this, and we understand this. I mean, here in the United States, we understand that Obama decided, we're going to let the illegals in. I'm going to create a memorandum, which is completely unconstitutional. And once they cross the border, they can get working papers, they can get benefits, and they can work for the corporations. And this was done on purpose because the corporations wanted the illegals in here because they will not get hit with the $3,000 penalty because they are not citizens. And this is why there was such a big drive to get the illegals in here. And then eventually to boost the numbers for Obamacare and so forth and so on. And we can see that DHS right now, they're just releasing anyone. 30,000 more criminal aliens were let loose onto the streets. They don't check their backgrounds. They do no checking whatsoever. They just bus them off to different areas. That's it. And we can see here in the United States, they're really closing in on the people's rights for free expression. And we can see this by the SEC taking control of the internet. Of course, they're using the story that, oh, it's all for net neutrality. No, they're making it a utility, so eventually what they can do is control the entire internet, place a tax on the internet. Because again, when a country is at the end, they continually add more taxes to bring in more revenue, to help pay for this debt. And it is getting more and more difficult to do this, and they're running out of options. They tried Obamacare, not working, not bringing in the revenue they thought. They tried FATCA, looking all over the world, but guess what? The debt is increasing way too fast for this revenue coming in. People have part-time jobs instead of the full-time jobs, so if you're making less, you're bringing in less revenue. It just can't work. So now they want to tax the internet. They're going to tax everything. They're going to try carbon taxes. They're going to do everything they possibly can to bring in more revenue. And we will see additional taxes come up as we go along. We also see them trying to break down the rights and tell us that they're privileges, they're not rights, and we can search you, and you have to speak freely only in these areas. You can't own a weapon. And this is what they're trying to do right now. The federal drug agents, what they're doing, the DEA, is that they are racially profiling and unjustly seizing cash from travelers in the nation's airports, bus stations, and train stations. A new report was released by the Office of the Inspector General for the U.S. Department of Justice, and they examined the DEA's controversial use of the cold consent. In a cold consent encounter, a person is stopped if an agent thinks the person's behavior fits a drug courier profile, or an agent will stop a person based on no particular behavior, just looking at them saying, they look suspicious. And according to the Inspector General report, the agent then asks the people they have stopped for consent to question them. And once they do this, they feel it's their right that they can go ahead and search the people's possessions. Because they're saying by gaining their consent, they bypass the need for a warrant. But they only consented to questions, not for searching. And I'm sorry, they still need to get a warrant. So if you are in an airport and DEA does come up to you or in your train station, bus station, do not consent to any questions whatsoever. It is your right not to go along with this. They have no proof of anything. They can't hold you for anything. And there's no reason you have to answer questions. And you can say, listen, I want an attorney present. I will not answer any questions whatsoever. Because they do believe once you agree to this, they can go ahead and search whatever you have. Now, in other countries, we also see them cracking down on the people. And of course, they're using it to say, oh, this is for your safety. This is why we have to spy on you. It's to keep you secure. Well, the Australian government says it is necessary for security purposes to keep your phone records, to spy on your internet data, and we need to keep this for 2 years. So they're doing the same thing the U.S. is doing right now, and it's all for the people to keep them secure. Of course it's not. It is there to spy on you, to see what exactly is going on. In France, the French Interior Ministry has now ordered that 5 websites be blocked by the government because they have officially been accused of promoting terrorism. And this is just the beginning. They go ahead and the government just determines that, yes, we don't want people to see this, and you're redirected to someplace else saying this is a block site because they promote terrorism. Really? How are they looking at this information? How are they judging it? They're just going ahead and doing it, and there are no judge reviews or anything else. They're just doing it. In England and France, what they're also doing, and British Prime Minister David Cameron publicly announced on 2 separate occasions that all of these so-called conspiracy theories, anything which challenges the official story of the government, should be deemed as extremists and equivalent to terrorists, and should be purged from society on the ground of national security. President Hollande made a similar declaration. But he takes it beyond the usual hyperbole and focuses on giving the state an administrative and legal foothold for policing both speech and thought crimes in France. If this can be accomplished in France, then a European rollout would soon follow. So we can see they are pushing draconian laws, trying to keep the people silent. They don't want alternative media, new media out there talking about things that don't go along and jive with the government. And they're finding it that it's just as easy just to shut them down and to block them than have them spouting out all this evidence that they don't want you to see. And we can see right now, every single country right now is doing the same thing. Canada is out there with their bill C-51, the Anti-Terrorism Act. This new bill will severely chill freedom of expression. It's unclear even to experts exactly what kinds of speech and protest activity may be considered threats to national security if the bill passes. It will allow government institutions like Health Canada and the Canada Revenue Agency to share information about each person. Canada already has a troubling regime of preventative arrest and detention. Bill C-51 proposes to make it even worse. Currently, the criminal code permits the police to arrest, detain, impose restrictions such as curfews or travel ban on someone who has never been and may never be charged with a crime if they have a good reason to believe a terrorist activity will be carried out if these actions are taken. Bill C-51 would lower the threshold of these actions to situations where the police believe that a terrorist activity might be carried out. It also doubles the amount of time an individual can be detained without charge. And we can see right now, this is almost like the NDAA, where the president can say, these are terrorists, we can detain you. There's no due process. Each country is doing the same exact thing. They're blocking down the entire system. They're controlling the people, and they don't want people talking to each other. They don't want people talking about government issues that don't go along with the official government story, and they don't want people getting together and talking about overthrowing a government or doing something else. And this is why they're trying to put all this into place. Because when the time comes, they can use these laws and say, you are a terrorist, you're a domestic terrorist. We can arrest you and they will throw you in prison. You will not see a lawyer. And you can see this is where it is all headed. It is happening throughout Europe, in Australia, in Canada, here in the US, in the UK. Because they need to control the people when this entire system comes crumbling down. Now, out in Afghanistan, we understand that John Kerry was in Afghanistan, helped the new president get elected. As soon as the president was elected, he signed the bilateral security agreement, which the former president, President Karzai, would not sign. And this is why the troops couldn't stay in Afghanistan. And as soon as he signed it, we are starting to see a completely different story. Now they're telling us that the soldiers are going to stay in Afghanistan. They're going to remain there. And now we're starting to see that, you remember all those bases that were going to shut down? Well, the U.S. military bases, at least 2 of them now, are most likely going to remain open. And you can see how they're doing this step by step to keep the soldiers there, to keep the bases operating, because they do not want to leave this area. And we can see right now they will be ramping up the soldiers. They're going to keep more and more bases open. And this is just like mission creep that we see in Iraq at this point. Now, out in Ukraine, we see that there was a poll taken, and this recent poll by Ukrainian research group shows how unhappy the country is with their politicians. Well, I hate to say this. These people didn't want these politicians in power. They were placed there by the United States government central bankers. Because there was a coup d'etat. No wonder why the people aren't happy. And look at the economy. They're in war. Why would anyone be happy? The country is being destroyed. Only 8% say the country is going in the right direction, while almost 2/3 assert they don't approve of the president's action. But what's really interesting is that they hate Yatsenyuk even more. He's even less popular. The people think he's doing a terrible job for them, and he doesn't support the people, and he's not helping the people financially. Well, that's not really a big surprise. He told you. It's not his job. He doesn't work for the people. He works for the bankers. I'm not giving you money. Poroshenko was out there even telling them, oh, we're spending $37 million on a wall. We can't help you with anything else, so you're on your own. So we can see right now this government is in it for themselves. They are not in it for the people, and this is why we're seeing a backlash right now. And I wouldn't be surprised if this number goes much, much higher. And eventually what we see is people rising up saying, you know what, enough's enough. And this will be a real grassroots uprising, not a coup d'etat which was paid for. And they will push out this government if the situation gets really, really bad. And we are headed in that direction. Now we understand that Poroshenko went ahead and he signed that the law that gave Donbass the special status. He also included that they are an occupied territory, and none of this goes live until they have elections which are approved by the Ukrainian government. And we can see now the heads of Donetsk and Lugansk in a joint statement stressed that Kiev had trampled upon the fragile Minsk peace deal and brought the situation to a complete deadlock. Poroshenko and Yatsenyuk have cynically laughed at the European Union partners who have spent so much effort on the negotiations, and right now Russia is calling on France and Germany to go into Ukraine and say, listen, you are not following the Minsk agreement. You are not following along, and what you're doing is against what we agreed upon. But so far we have heard nothing from Germany. We have heard nothing from France. And we can see this is all being done to push war. They don't want to have peace. They don't want to cease fire. And right now Yatsenyuk is warning the EU leaders to continually put pressure on Russia. Don't split apart, because there are some countries there that do not want to put more sanctions on Russia because they see it is really hurting their economies. And they want to step back a little bit, and they want the Minsk agreement to work. And they're looking at this and they're going back and forth, and Yatsenyuk is trying to convince them that no, we need more pressure on Russia to keep them in line. But what's really happening is Kiev is not going along with the Minsk agreement. So any pressure you put on Russia does absolutely nothing. It's pretty much just propaganda at this point. And it's hurting the European states, countries. They're the ones who are hurting out of all of this. Now, to clear up some of the ceasefire problems, because Kiev continually says the rebels are violating the ceasefire, and the southeastern people are saying Ukraine is violating the ceasefire. So the OSCE, they're going to receive high-tech equipment that will allow the organization to visually record ceasefire violations. Now, of course, they have to be in the right place at the right time, and the cameras have to be pointed in that direction. In a conflict replete with propaganda from competing sides, a picture can say 1,000 words, and finally, those pictures may become available to the general public. The head of the international organization monitoring the war in Ukraine said he hopes to publish photographs of ceasefire violations using these sophisticated imagery technology. And we'll have to see what these pictures are of and see what they're actually showing when they do come out. Now, we can see right now that the Minsk II agreement is pretty much falling apart right now. Kiev does not want to go along with this. And we've seen this happen with the Minsk I deal. That didn't go anywhere. And we can see the Minsk I and the Minsk II both contain two parts. One is for a ceasefire and military disengagement. The other is for a political process involving first a law for special status of those of Ukrainian eastern regions that are resisting Kiev, and for negotiation process that would result in a new constitution that would grant the same eastern region significant autonomy with Ukraine. Minsk 2 requires that this new constitution should be agreed before the end of the year. And what we're seeing right now is they're not following along in that area. They're also not following along when they remove their heavy artillery. They are only bringing it back about 12 to 18 miles, and that is not far enough. But again, we can see they're not going along with this whatsoever. Lavrov is out there, and he is saying that Kiev is pushing a military solution. And he is saying that when Joe Biden, the Vice President of the United States, called Poroshenko on Wednesday, he told him to, yes, give Donbass that special status. And it seems like it was done on purpose to continually push the agenda of war. And we can see right now that the special self-rule status completely violates the peace agreement. And I think they all knew this, and they did it on purpose. And at the same time that all this is going on, we understand that the United States has advisors inside the country. We understand that the UK has advisors in the country, and we can see that the British military, they are going to begin training the Ukrainian armies. And they're going to help them, and they're going to train them for 2 months. And we can see right now, why are they training them if they're in the middle of a ceasefire deal? It makes no sense. Russia is out there asking the question, why does the US, UK, and other countries have military advisors in the country? Because it violates the Minsk agreement. And of course, the US and UK, they're not responding to any of this because their one mission is to continually push war. Now we see Russia, they're making agreements all over the globe with Cyprus, with Brazil, Venezuela, and now Russia has made an agreement with Argentina. They have agreed on military cooperation and development, and we can see why they're doing this, because they understand, especially Putin understands, that the United States government central bankers, they're going to continually push war and try to provoke Russia, South America, and North Korea, and China, until they actually get a war started. And we can see Russia, China, they're definitely taking precautions right now and setting up agreements with all these different countries, because they really need to have the cooperation of all these countries, because they realize these central bankers are not going to give up. They're going to continually provoke and provoke and provoke until they get something started. And if they can't get a country to do something, they will use something called a false flag event, where the United States government central bankers will do something, and they will make it look like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, Argentina, Venezuela, Brazil, they're the ones who've done it. Now, we understand that Russia is having their World War II Victory Day parade. They actually sent an invitation to the United States, but Obama declined because he is too busy to attend. And we can see that there's going to be about 15,000 servicemen from more than 10 countries that will march on Moscow's main Red Square on Victory Day. And we can see while all this is happening, we see that the military assets are being positioned in Poland. We see anti-missile batteries are being set up because they're going to be used for the rapid response drills. And of course, once all this is set up, most of the time, I would say 99.999% of the time, most of the military assets, a lot of the soldiers, stay in this region for an extended period of time. And this is how they trick people into putting military assets into an area. Now we can see that Netanyahu miraculously won the elections in Israel, even though the exit polls and the pre-election polls had a complete opposite view of what was going on. And he, during his election, he was calling out there saying all the different things. And one of them was that there was going to be no two-state. The Palestinians are not going to have their own state. And we can see right now, he might have put his foot in his mouth, because we see the White House right now is saying that they want a two-state solution. France is for it. Australia is for it. We see the UK is for it. And I think they're going to put a lot of pressure on Israel to allow Palestine to be separate and apart from Israel. And we're going to have to watch this to see where this goes if Israel decides to gin up another war in this area. And we'll have to watch that very carefully. Now, yesterday we understand that there was a false flag event in Tunisia. And, of course, the Islamic State right now has claimed responsibility for the deadly museum attack. Now, the question is, why in the world did they pick a museum? If there was going to be a real terrorist act, would you pick a museum or a deli? Or it makes no sense whatsoever. This is really propaganda at this point. They wanted something big to show up on TV, and we're not even sure if it was really the Islamic State, because again, they have hoods on, masks. We don't know who exactly they are. And I see some reports out there saying that they have no tie to terrorism, but the Islamic State is taking credit for it, which is the proxy army for the United States, UK, Israel, and other countries. And now Tunisia is being dragged into the war on terror. And we can see the United States came out right away and said, listen, the United States will help you. We'll assist you. We will send the FBI, the CIA, the investigation team to help you find out exactly what happened. Now, they've done this to every single country where something has happened, and this allows them to bring in troops. We saw it happen in Sudan. We saw it happen in Kenya. They tried it with Nigeria, but they rejected them. And this is why Boko Haram joined up with the Islamic State. And remember, wherever the Islamic State is, that's where the United States wants to go or needs to get back into. And we can see right now, this is what they're trying to do. Now, was this enough to push the authorization war forward? I don't think so. I think something else is brewing, something much, much bigger. Now, John Kerry made that statement that he believed that you should have negotiations with Assad, and now he's saying, no. That's not what happened. We don't want to negotiate with Assad. We want to get rid of him. So I guess he had a talking to, and now he's changing his mind completely. And we understand that a drone was shot down over Syria. Now, U.S. is warning Syria, how dare you interfere with our aerial assets? You have no right to shoot down a drone or anything else over your airspace. Because, think about it. Let's see, the United States invaded Syria, because that's basically what they did, because it's a sovereign nation. They didn't ask permission. They are in there flying planes, using missiles, flying drones, and I'm sorry, if one of these things get close to their armed forces and they feel it is a threat, they have every right to shoot it down. I mean, should the same scenario occur here in the United States? Would the United States allow this? If Syria says, oh, wait, you're telling us there's lone wolf groups inside the United States right now? The Islamic State is there? Well, we're going to start bombing different areas. We're going to be flying our drones in your country. Is that okay? Well, we're not even going to ask. We're just going to do it. No, the United States would be shooting these things down left and right. And remember, the U.S. government, the corporate media, has continually telling us that the Islamic State is already in the United States. So does this mean that any country can come into the United States? Think about this for a second. Russia is out there and they're saying, well, wait a minute. We need to get together with everybody, the coalition forces, and let's talk about this terrorism problem, because they're starting to realize, wait a minute, the United States and the coalition forces, those are the only ones that are allowed to fight terrorism. Why can't other countries help? Because it affects everybody. But again, the United States does not want this, because it's really not a terrorism outfit. It's a proxy army, and they're trying to keep this under wraps. They don't want people to know this. But everyone is starting to find out. We see in Iraq, they've shot down a helicopter or plane that was carrying weapons and ammunition to the Islamic State. They have photos of this. They've had spotters spotting this, and this has been UK planes, US planes. And again, what is happening here is that other countries are starting to realize that this really isn't a terrorist threat. And they want an explanation for what is going on. Now, here we are once again. The United States government central bankers are pushing new propaganda. Actually, it's the same propaganda, that Assad has used chlorine weapons and he has attacked his own people once again. And we can see that Kerry is out there and he's saying that we must put pressure on Assad because Assad's regime is using chlorine gas, and it's a horrifying pattern. He's continually doing this, and something has to be done because he's violating international law. He's continually doing this, and he is someone that cannot be in command of Syria because he's a dictator, he's a terrorist, and again, this is again propaganda. We've seen this before, and they're trying to push this out there and convince everyone that this is what's happening. The only thing they're using this for is to convince everyone the reason why they need to invade Syria. And this is what they're pushing right now. Now, some of the U.S. allies in the fight against the Islamic State in Syria are willing to send troops into Syria. Well, as soon as they can get that authorization for war going, believe me, the U.S. is going to be sending troops in there because they just can't do it with air power because they're going to need troops on the ground to capture the areas after they bombard it with, bombs, missiles, and they destroy the region. Because if they do not have the ground troops, how do they keep it? They can't. This is what they're doing in Syria right now. The Islamic State has their own air force. It's the United States, the coalition forces, Israel. They bomb the area, and the Islamic State expands their area. This is why their area has grown 3 times now. And we see the authorization for war has stalled in the House. Today, during the House Armed Services testimony, the matter was barely discussed. Legally speaking, a war authorization was supposed to come within 90 days of the war's beginning, though the administration didn't even offer a proposal until months later. And right now it is going absolutely nowhere. And we can see that this was just the start of a false flag event in Tunisia. Even the Islamic State is out there, and again, we don't even know if they did it. They're just taking credit for it. They're telling everyone this is just the beginning. And we see now the U.S. Embassy in Djibouti, guess what? Still closed because of security threats. We see the U.S. Embassy in Saudi Arabia. Guess what? It's going to remain closed until further notice due to heightened security concerns. So they must be planning something very, very large. Maybe a multiple false flag event because they see what's going on with the authorization for war. It is not moving. So most likely we might see this in that region. They might even expand it into Europe and the United States, but we're going to have to watch this very carefully, and we can see they are definitely building up for this. They're definitely building for another false flag event to convince the people we need to go to war. And if this does occur and they get the authorization for war, we don't know how Russia and China are going to react. Because once the troops they're deployed into Syria, into Iraq, into all these countries, Russia and China are not just going to sit back. Maybe in the beginning they'll just watch and try to push peace out there. But eventually they're going to say, okay, wait a minute. Now they're taking it too far. Now they're near Damascus. Now it looks like they are definitely going after Assad. We need to get involved. And this is something we will definitely see. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.